Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Planetarium show. My name is Jessica. I am the director of the Planetarium, and with me tonight is one of my students who is kind of a familiar face, but I will let him introduce himself.
Hi, my name's Eli. I'm a physics and astronomy undergraduate at UMD.
So, tonight we are going to be exploring the mystery of the Northern Lights, what they are, some really interesting mythologies behind them, what causes them, and some tips and tricks to help you find them and see them for yourself. So, I'm going to get everything set up to start sharing the show. But while I do so, if you do have any questions throughout the show tonight, feel free to leave them down in the comments. Eli's going to be keeping an eye on that for me and will let me know when those questions come in. We'll also have time at the end of the show as well to answer questions. All right, so to get started with the mystery of the Northern Lights, we'll start with just a general kind of description. And you can find different people have different descriptions depending on what they say, most or what they see. Most people describe the Northern Lights as this kind of dancing curtain of lights. They can be either very faint or a little bit more intense, depending on exactly where you are and the specifications of what's going on, which we'll get into throughout the show tonight. One thing that you may not know is the aurora or the lights are not, I forgot the word, uh, not only around the North Pole, there is a similar effect around the South Pole as well. So we have a northern lights and a southern lights as well. The Aurora Borealis being the northern lights and the Aurora Australis being the southern lights. And these two regions around the North and South Pole are what we call the auroral zones, the region that the aurora takes place in and is created in. Now, the exact size of the auroral, that's always a difficult word to say. The size of these zones does kind of depend on what's going on, which we'll get into. But that's why you can sometimes see the aurora in locations one day and may not be able to see them there the next.
So we actually already just got a question.
Awesome.
We address it later, but the question is, why are the northern lights colorful?
That is a good question, and I will get into that in just a little bit. All right. So before we get into the science behind the aurora, what's causing it, where the colors come from, all of that, let's take a little look at some of the mythology behind it. Because a lot of Northern Hemisphere cultures, especially those that are closer to the North Pole, have different explanations for what this dancing curtain of light is supposed to be. And the name Aurora Borealis is actually from the Greeks. Aurora is related to the goddess of the dawn, so the goddess who kind of brought the light and transitioned from from night to day. And then Boreas means wind. And so this is supposed to translate to the wind that brings the lights, which is kind of what it looks like, a dancing kind of windy curtain of lights. But one of my favorite explanations for the aurora or mythologies behind them actually comes from Finland, where they describe the aurora as the flowing tail of the Firefox, who ran too quickly across the snow and basically his tail started to spark. And it's those sparks of light that we're seeing as the dancing lights of the aurora. And there's actually a really, really cute animated short about this. I'm going to play a very small clip for you, just because I love it and I love having an excuse to play it.
Really quick before the clip starts, sorry.
Yeah.
We got another question. Does the brightness of the aurora change?
It does, and that is something I will explain in a little bit as well. So that is the glowing tail of the Finnish Firefox. Again, that is a very small portion of that clip. If you are interested in watching the whole thing, which I highly encourage because it's adorable, I have it linked in the video description, so you can go check that out. And then a few other interesting cultural mythologies around the aurora. The Chinese saw the aurora as battling dragons. And so you had the good and evil dragons that would battle it out in the sky. And then the Inuit saw the aurora as the spirits of their ancestors playing a ball game up in the sky. This particular ball game was played with a walrus skull that acts like the ball, but that's what they saw these dancing lights as their ancestors playing a ball game up in the sky, which I think is really cute. All right, so let's get into some of the science. What exactly is going on to cause these dancing lights? And the short answer is our sun. The longer answer, we need to understand that the sun is constantly kind of churning and moving and changing, and there's this steady stream of charged particles that's always flowing out and away from the sun. And we call this the solar wind. The exact strength of the solar wind can change depending on the day and exactly what's going on in the sun, but there's always this steady stream of charged particles flowing away. In addition to that, the sun can also have sudden bursts, like we're seeing here, things like solar flares or things like coronal mass ejections, where we have a sudden intense extra burst of charged particles being flung off the sun. But all of this means that at all times, there are charged particles flying out through space away from the sun, and some of those make their way to us here at the Earth. Now, I don't want to scare anyone about this because we're not in danger from this. And that's because the Earth has its own kind of shield to protect us. We have a magnetic field. This is very similar to like a bar magnet. If you've ever played around with a bar magnet and iron filings, and you've seen those iron filings kind of fall in these arced lines between the north and south pole of the bar magnet, the Earth is similar to that. I don't want to go too into depth with this. It's a slightly different process to create the magnetic field than a bar magnet, but the overall effect is the same. And so we're surrounded by these arching magnetic field lines, and that acts like a magnetic shield. So when that stream of charged particles gets to us coming from the sun, it doesn't actually hit us because that magnetic field blocks that flow and directs it away from us so we don't get hit. So almost all of these charged particles don't make their way to us and we're fine, but not all of them are deflected. Some of them make it through, and when they make it through that initial kind of outer layer, they end up caught in the magnetic field lines, which then cause those charged particles to spiral down to either the north or the south pole. And that's because that's where all of these lines are kind of converging and coming from, is the north and the south. And so when those charged particles get caught, they spiral down and they get concentrated around the north and south pole, and that's where those auroral zones come from. So when those charged particles make it to the Earth, what they end up doing is they hit the atoms and molecules that make up the upper atmosphere. And when those gases in the atmosphere get hit, that causes them to glow. And the different types of atoms and molecules in our atmosphere glow different colors. So the red color comes from glowing oxygen that is kind of higher up in the atmosphere. Then we have oxygen lower in the atmosphere that glows green. And the difference here is, sorry, I don't know if you can see, my cat is trying to settle on my keyboard. Say hi, Nova. Anyway, the red and green both being associated with oxygen comes from whether the oxygen is a single atom or whether it's molecular oxygen, two oxygen atoms bound together. Those are going to glow two different colors. And then mixed in with that as well is nitrogen, which when hit glows either blue or red, again, depending on if it's a single atom of nitrogen or whether it's a molecule of two nitrogen atoms bonded together. And that's what creates the different colors of the aurora that we see. Now, coming back to the strength of the aurora, how bright and strong it is, that's going to depend on how many of these charged particles are actually hitting our atmosphere. So when we have something like a solar flare that sends an extra burst of charged particles our way, more of them are going to get through just because there's more overall. And so you're going to end up having more hitting the atmosphere, causing more atoms to glow, and therefore you're going to get a stronger, brighter aurora. You'll also be able to see that further down from the poles, and that's how that auroral zone also changes kind of overall size, is based off of how much charged particles are getting through and hitting our atmosphere. But this also explains why we see the colors in kind of different locations in our atmosphere, because it's the different types of atoms and molecules being hit. This is also why the aurora, when seen from the International Space Station, as we're seeing it here, seems to hover above the ground, because this is just the gases in the upper atmosphere that's glowing. It doesn't actually come all the way down to the surface of the Earth. All right, so I just gave the answer away, but before we talk a little bit more about how you can see the aurora from here on Earth, it's kind of interesting to take a look at other planets to see if the same type of thing can happen, and it turns out it can. So here we have the planets Jupiter and Saturn, which have auroral rings around their poles that look an awful lot like ours. And they are caused in the same way. Both Jupiter and Saturn have their own magnetic field that creates a magnetic shield around them. And those streams of charged particles from the sun, some of them get through, make it down, and hit the atmosphere, causing it to glow. We see kind of different colors here because this glow is actually more in UV light instead of visible. And that's because their magnetic fields are much stronger than ours. And so those particles end up moving a lot faster and hit the atmosphere at faster speeds. But we see that there. Excuse me, Uranus and Neptune, we also see aurora around. You can see here that it looks a little bit different. And that's because there's some weird stuff going on with the magnetic fields around Uranus and Neptune that we don't fully understand, but that causes the auroras to have a little bit different shape. Now, as far as closer to home, Venus and Mars do not have a traditional aurora like we do because they don't have a magnetic field. We do see some interesting kind of glowing activity caused by other things, but it's not an aurora like we have here and like we see on the outer planets. All right, so let's make our way back to the Earth. And we will wrap up talking about the best ways to actually see the aurora for yourself. Now, obviously, if you want to see the aurora, you need to be within that auroral zone, which limits us to pretty close to the North Pole. Us up here in northern Minnesota, that auroral zone does dip down here, especially when we have really strong solar winds or a flare or CME. But if you're any lower than Minnesota, you're much less likely to see it. So you're going to have to travel up north for a little bit to see it. But the best way to kind of tell if you're going to be able to see the aurora from your location is to look at a prediction map. There are quite a few different places that give predictions. I've listed a few of the websites in the video description. So there's places like spaceweather.com. The NOAA also does an aurora prediction. And the general idea is it shows what that auroral zone is going to look like. And so you can kind of see which parts of the Earth are going to fall within that and get an idea of how likely you are to see it from your area. Another thing that is often used in these predictions is what we call the KP index, which is really just a number to designate how strong the aurora is and how likely it is for you to see it. And so ideally, you want to be in a situation where your KP index is higher. At least a 4 or a 5 is going to get you a, non-zero chance of seeing it. But the higher that is, the more likely you are able to see the aurora. And those same kind of forecasting websites will give that KP index for your location. Now, these websites can look a little scary at first until you kind of get used to them. But another great tool is actually a phone app called Aurora. And it does just this. It has that Aurora prediction, but it uses your GPS location to tell you what your KP index is and what your chance of seeing the Aurora is for your specific location. I have this app. I know many of us at the Planetarium do. And it's actually really cool because you can set it up so that it gives you an actual push notification when the KP index starts climbing and will tell you, hey, you're starting to get good chances, go outside. And so you can get those notifications so that you can know when that's happening.
Really quick, Jessica, we got a couple
Yeah.
questions.
Okay.
The first one, and I know this is one that we like to talk about at the planetarium. Why do we only see the lights in the winter?
So we don't only see the lights in the winter, which is something I was going to talk about in just a minute. But a lot of people have that misconception that the aurora is only in the winter because a lot of auroral pictures have snow, but that's because they're coming from really northern latitudes where there is snow for a good chunk of the year. The other reason is wintertime has longer nights, right? Our winter days are shorter, nights are longer, and that just means you have a longer period of time that you're able to possibly see the lights because it's dark. But you can see them all year round. There is no seasonal dependence there.
Another one is how far in advance can they predict the visibility?
So we can typically about a day or two in advance. And these predictions come from looking at the solar wind activity and any flares and coronal mass ejections, because the light from those gets to us about a day and a half before the actual charged particles do. And so we have a little bit of advance notice that chances in that activity could be higher. And that's why you'll also see especially here in Minnesota, I know we'll often get news articles that are just like, hey, chance of aurora is higher over the next 2 days. And that's where that's coming from. In fact, another place that I forgot to mention is a good place to check for this is Astro Bob's blog, Bob King. Especially if you are in the Duluth area, he always posts when we have higher chances of aurora. And he's just great to follow anyway. He's amazing.
Yeah. And then the last one is the app free. Yeah.
Yes, the app is free. Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So now that we know what's causing it, we have our tips to figure out how likely we are to see the aurora in our area. I want to end with a couple of words of caution. Or no, actually, I'm going to first talk about locations and then words of caution. There are some locations in Minnesota that we can give recommendations for better chances of being able to see the aurora. Obviously, the further north you go, the better your chances are going to be. So anywhere up in kind of Cook County up here, Voyageurs National Park, places like that. We can see it all the way down here in Duluth. But typically it's a little bit fainter, so you're going to want to get out of the city, places like Brighton Beach or Hawk Ridge, just away from the city lights. But I have been told, and I say this because I've only been living in Minnesota for about 2.5 years now, but when we do have very strong auroras, they can reach all the way down to the cities, where you can see them if you're able to get out of the main kind of light polluted area of the main cities. So just some places that you can go. And again, the further north you can get, the better your chances are going to be.
I can attest to the Twin Cities. The only time I've ever seen them was down, just outside of the Twin Cities. So,
I haven't had a chance to see them yet. I'm still waiting.
yeah, I haven't seen them since I've lived in Duluth, but like probably somewhere around 15 years ago, I saw them down by the Twin Cities. We actually just got another question. This is on my bucket list. International Falls.
Yeah.
I don't know what International Falls is.
That is right up here.
Is it? I have no idea
It's
what that is.
kind of northern border center. I don't know if you can see on the strain.
Yeah, you're up there.
Absolutely, you can see it up there.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so now for my word of warning. When you have seen images or videos of the aurora, you've probably seen things like this bottom row here, very vibrant, very colorful. But the thing to remember is that's what's captured through a camera, which is able to pick up colors and even just light a lot better than our eyes can. And so when you actually go out to see the aurora, it may not look as vibrant as the pictures. In fact, you may not see much color to it at all, depending on how strong the aurora is. I've heard some people say that it was so faint that it honestly looked like kind of high altitude clouds floating by. And if they didn't have a camera with them to kind of take those pictures and see that green glow in the pictures, they wouldn't have known that that was actually aurora. So I don't want you to be disappointed when you go out. Just keep in mind that our eyes see things differently than cameras. And so the colors may not be as vibrant and they may not be as bright as the pictures and images that you see. But that doesn't mean that you should not go out and try and see it. I mean, I think this is still supposed to be absolutely beautiful. Again, I haven't seen it yet. It's on my list of things that I'm excited to see now that I live up here in Minnesota and not down in South Carolina where there was just no chance of ever seeing it. Hi, Mom. I think you're here. You can come up and see the aurora with me. But just keep that in mind as far as kind of the expectations of what to see.
We actually just got another interesting question.
Okay.
Does the aurora make noise?
You know, I have heard accounts of people that say they can hear something.
Yeah,
I've also heard accounts of people who say that they could smell the aurora.
Yeah. Yep.
I don't know the validity of those.
I would venture to guess that smelling it makes more sense than hearing it, just because you got that ionization going on in the atmosphere.
Yeah.
But hearing it, I don't know. Maybe if it was like way strong enough and the atmosphere is just really taking a beating, maybe you could actually.
Possibly. I don't know. But
I don't know. I wonder what it would sound like. I feel like it would just sound like when it's raining and there's power lines and you just hear that. Like it would sound like that.
Yeah, probably. But yeah, I've heard that you can, but I don't know the validity of that.
That's an interesting question.
But yeah, that's a good one. All right. And that concludes our Aurora show. So now you have some great information and can plan accordingly in the future to be able to go out and see the Aurora for yourself. I think one thing that I forgot to mention, I've said that the solar wind kind of varies with time. But how often we have things like flares and coronal mass ejections also vary with time. The sun has this 11-year cycle that it goes through where it peaks down to having very, very little activity and then ramps up to having a lot of activity over this 11-year period. for the past few years, we have been in solar minimum. So there have not been flares and coronal mass ejections and things like that, at least not very often. But we are starting to climb out of solar minimum and make our way back to solar maximum, where these are going to be a lot more common. So the amount of charged particles heading our way is going to increase, and so the aurora will be stronger and easier to see as we approach solar maximum. So I'm excited for that. I can't wait to finally see it. And we usually do a pretty, we try to be up to date and put out posts on our social media if we know that chances for the Duluth area are getting kind of up there. So always kind of keep an eye out, and we will try and let you know if it's coming up. All right. Do we have any more questions?
The only question we've gotten next is, what's the next show?
So our next show is on Saturday, and we're going to be doing a special Valentine's show called Love is in the Stars. And so we're going to explore the different constellations from around the world that have to do with love of all kinds. So not just romantic love, but friendship, familial love, all of that. And we're just going to have some fun exploring these different star stories from around the world.
Someone also just said we've just got a couple thank yous. We also got complimented on our backgrounds.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
It's a lot better than actually seeing the messy apartment behind me.
Yeah. Not much back there.
I forgot, I won't say I forgot. I did not have time to get the images, the promo images for next week's shows, but I can go ahead and tell you. Next Wednesday, we're going to be doing a special show all about the Perseverance lander, because it is landing on the 18th. So we're going to have a show all about it on the 17th. And then next Saturday, we're doing, what are we doing next Saturday? Solar system. We're going to take you on a tour of the solar system next Saturday. Other than that, if you want to have a private show with us, we are offering private virtual shows and virtual field trips. You can find out more information about that on our website. And if you love what we do and would like to support us, we are also selling our Stellar Distancing t-shirts to help us raise money, since we have been closed for almost a year now. But I will also tease that we're going to have some new designs coming out soon as well. So I don't have a time frame for that yet, but soon we're going to have some new designs, which I'm excited. I've been working on them for a little while. They're going to be cool. But yeah.
Somebody just said that you should bring Nova to the next show. Have a little cameo. Also, yes, this will be available for later viewing. Go back on our videos on Facebook, and they are all there.
Yeah. On our Facebook page, you can go to the videos tab. We also upload them to our YouTube channel. So you can find all of our past videos there as well.
We also got a thanks from NZ. I'm assuming that's New Zealand. That's hop, a skip, and a jump away.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I'm afraid our Northern Hemisphere information isn't incredibly relevant to you, but you guys have the same down there. Aurora Australis, right off the coast.
Which should be visible.
Yeah, got another proponent of Nova being at the next show as well.
She jumped down, or else I'd have her say hi again. She was trying to sleep on my keyboard during the show, which was not going to do good things on screen. So I think she's mad at me for kicking her off my desk. But she will most definitely make an appearance. She's always up here.
We just got another one. What's the visibility chance in Arizona when hell freezes over? Yeah, that's probably about it.
Yeah.
You're not going to get much down there.
Probably not.
If the storm is strong enough to give you guys Aurora, I think we have bigger things to worry about.
Quite possibly. But I mean, once pandemic is over and it's safe to travel, you can always come visit us up here.
Yeah, come on up.
Yeah.
The kind of a little funny thing is sometimes when these solar storms are too strong, i.e. one that would give you appreciable aurora down in Arizona, the consequences can be kind of dire. All those ions can really mess with electronics and things. And there have been, I believe it was like in the 1920s, sometime like that. There was a storm so strong that it pretty much like knocked out like half of New Jersey's power system. And like that area, like all the way up to Canada, was just like without power for a while. And then also back in the 1800s, when the telegraph system was big, another big storm happened, and it like knocked out the telegraph system.
Yeah.
So
the one thing I will add to this though is we do have more solar monitoring now than we did then. So we are constantly watching. So we will have a couple of days notice, as I was saying, so we can prepare for anything like that may be heading our way. Yeah. So not wanting to scare people.
No, don't, no reason to be scared. The worst thing that would happen is, the perishables in your fridge would probably go bad, if anything.
Might have to live without your YouTube cat videos for a little while.
Yeah, man, I don't know if I could do that. I'd have to break out the Game Boy or something. Just got another one. What's the best place in the world to see Aurora? Just anywhere north or incredibly south, just as long as you're within that ring. It doesn't really matter where you are as long as you're up in that.
Yeah. And
latitudes.
I know the places that do have it very regularly advertise about that.
Yeah.
And they do have, I'm pretty sure a lot of them have like tourist, like tours and stuff that you can take to locations there. I know there's some in northern Canada. There's also a lot in Finland, Norway, and Sweden.
I was going to say, I would imagine Scandinavia.
Yeah, I think Greenland too.
Yeah, I was going to say that would be really pretty.
Yeah,
I want to go to Greenland so bad.
Me too.
But yeah, I think that's about it.
Yeah. But you don't necessarily have to travel too far out of the country.
Yeah.
Or even out of the country to see it. 2021, more disasters.
Yeah, no thanks. I wasn't going to comment on that, but I'm going to knock on my desk now.
All right. It looks to be about the end of the questions. So thank you everyone so much for joining us. We hope that you enjoyed the show, and definitely come back and check out some of our others. We stream regularly here on Facebook on Wednesdays and Saturdays at 7 p.m. Central. And we do lots of fun stuff, lots of different show topics. And if you are one of, I was going to say one of our regulars, but if you're here often and there's something, a topic or show that we haven't done that you're interested in seeing, let us know. Because, we definitely would like some new ideas too, to make some new stuff. And we obviously want to make shows that you want to see. So if you have suggestions or things, let us know and we'll do what we can. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Again, have a wonderful rest of your evening, and we will see you next time. Bye, everyone.